that, you know, instead of holding down jobs and being sensible and having children, we should, you know, try to become writers. And therefore, what you write about, we were both city people, we've grown up in Calcutta. We had to see the country. And of course, if you travel in a fancy way, all the places look alike. All the hotel rooms look the same. But if you decide that you're going to do away with the fripperies, then you can actually hear people's stories, get scolded by people, strap on backpacks and go to the local chai shop and hang out and really get to feel the place. The book that we wrote was called The Heat and Dust Project. And it was also a bit of an India book. It was also reclaiming a certain travel writing tradition. This is interesting because a lot of books written in English about India have what I call the heat and dust, they fall into the heat and dust stereotype, right? So there's a famous novel by Ruth Prawar Jhabwala called Heat and Dust. So we wanted to write back to that. And as I was saying, as in Ohmiya in Bengali, there is a very robust tradition of travel writing. So that's something that I had grown up on. And there is, you know, which is why I was so happy to hear the word gossip from you. Because that gossipy travel mate is the one who makes all the difference. And the other thing is that, you know, when you're traveling and you are going to write something about it, it really helps if bad things happen, right? Bad things make for the best stories. Okay, if you just went to a beautiful place and sat by a beautiful river and had a pleasant conversation, there isn't much to write about.
Well, there's no conflict.
There's no drama. Yeah, you have to survive to tell the tale.
And publish posthumously.
Sell more. I don't think my publishers would even hesitate before, you know, sort of
die while on an adventure, you know.
Yeah, because when we were actually, you know, going to sort of talking to the marketing team about the Heat and Dust project, they said, you know what would really work if we sell it as a book where you guys during the travel broke up, okay? Which is why it's the Broke Couple's Guide to Bharat. We said, well, as it is, we got into quite a lot of trouble about the broke. So as soon as the cover was designed, I sent it off to my parents and to my dad-in-law, and immediately they all called back and said, is it essential to put broke on the cover? You know, people are going to, what are they going to say? So that's precisely what we want. But the other thing about traveling together is that it kind of, especially on a very, very tight budget, is that it ends up becoming what we call the ultimate relationship test. Okay? Because when you're traveling alone, if you fall sick, you get into a lot of trouble. But when you're traveling alone, you control the itinerary. But if the budget is tight and the two people traveling are also lovers, then hell can break loose at every step, which also made for a fascinating way of crafting a narrative together. So we had two different voices and yeah, things from different perspectives. And then there were a few recurrent humorous tropes. But for instance, I'm addicted to cake or chocolate in some form or the other. My husband is an economist, and so he kept the accounts, you know, very, very scrupulously. So we said we'll do it 500 rupees a day for both of us, bed and board. And so that left very little money for food and no money for cake and chocolate. So you can imagine how trying that was.
If there was a moment when you guys were arguing over something, would he just whip out, like, here, just go buy some cake, honey, and all will be fine?
I wanted to push him to that point, but yeah, well, he took out the budget. So, yeah, so it's going to be a trilogy. There's going to be a second part and a third part. But
do you have titles for them yet?
Yes, well, the second part is actually called Man, Woman, Road. R-O-A-D, Road. So it's sort of that we try to make our home on the road, which is amazing, but then at some point you have to come back to a home, like a brick and mortar thing, and then it's a bit of a letdown.
And what about the third one? Do you have a title for the third one?
Not yet.
Not yet, okay. So any audience members have ideas, you know where to put them.
But ultimate relationship test, I tell you, you should do that. If you are in love, do this. do an extreme budget journey, and if you survive it, then you know indeed you found the right person.
Thank you. Amar? Could be.
But speaking after you, I want to say it's much better if you travel alone.
Here, here.
Because if you had Mr. and Mrs. Marco Polo traveling, or Mr. and Mrs. Al-Baruni, they wouldn't have so much interaction with people. So when you're sitting alone, people come up to you, you can go up to people, you can pretend to be lost when you're not lost, and start up a conversation. So that's an aside. But I wanted actually to talk about travel and journeys at another level. I think that when you look at life, the whole of life is a journey. And I'm speaking as an Indian in the philosophical sense, that everything is journeying. If you look at the cosmos, if you look at the planets, if you look at the earth. So ours is a journey. Within that journey, and you travel in mind, you travel in body, and you travel in time, and you travel in space. So you've got lots of permutation and combinations happening, and depend which one you evoke and how you evoke it singularly with interaction with people, the journey then becomes that much more exciting. And there is a wonderful quote, a couplet actually in Hindi, but I'll translate it after I say it, which says, "Meri zindagi ek musalsil safar hai, jo manzil pe pahunche to manzil badha de." So when you talk of a journey, you don't say, "Oh, this is my ultimate journey. If I get to the Brahmaputra river, I will stop traveling." That doesn't happen. Because even if you have, like I went to Mount Kailash, about 400 kilometers, and when people say, "Wow, you did Mount Kailash, now what will you do after this?" But then there was Chota Kailash, which is in India, because when you couldn't cross the border and you have the Chinese issue and the Tibetan issue, so we invented another Kailash. And then I went to the Southern Tatu. So, the planet is large enough for us. We can travel continuously, and when you set your mind on one destination, having reached Guwahati, let's say, I can't say now I've seen the world, or Rome, I've reached Rome, now I don't need to travel. Because immediately, the restless mind and restless body needs to fill that space on planet Earth. And then when we are through with that, there's the planet Moon and there's the planet something else.
Do you guys feel like as travelers, the more places you see, the more you want to see? It's like a never-ending list, I feel like.
It is. It's like knowledge, You see, the more you know, the less you know. So you can't say, I've probably traveled more of the world than most of the students here. But people say, which is the place you like the most? It's a bad question. Because you can't always be comparing people. If you say you met 10 people at the Brahmaputra festival, who do you like the most? You must like something in everybody, because every experience teaches you something, and you can also, in your own modest way, teach people something. So I think traveling is the whole purpose of life. The journey of life is the journey of journeys.
Thank you. Well, hell is a third-class Indian railway carriage. Would you agree with that? Probably not, but this is something I wrote 50 years ago after traveling overnight, failing to get a booking from what was Madras to Mumbai. And we were crushed together on the luggage rack of a train, and that's what I wrote. But over the years, I found that, my affection for Indian trains has grown considerably. And I think that's been part of the process of developing, of growing up, of appreciating more and more. And I love the fact that people look after you. I was a little boy, my first train journey was when I was 14 in India by myself, and they just adopted me and fed me, chased away the ticket collectors when the ticket collectors came, explained to me that ticket collectors needed to be bribed, but they would defend me from the bribers, fed me, and I've had a love affair with Indian trains ever since. Of course, as I've grown older and got a bit more money, I was even able to go on the Rajdabi Express or whatever. Very grand. But I'll never forget that first journey. And this is my book, the first travel book I wrote, the only pure travel book. It's called Beyond the First Circle. And there's lots of literary references which no one will get, but the idea is travels in the second and third world. But I'll only talk about the travels in India and how it's been a process of growing up for me. And I travel in India whenever I can. So the last time I came to the Guwahati, the Brahmputra festival, I went off to Nagaland because they wouldn't give me an Arunachal permit. This time they have given me one, so I'm off to Tawang tomorrow, day after. And I just love traveling in India. But let me read to you the first journey I did in India, just a phrase. I was 14 at the time. You couldn't travel from outer Sri Lanka. You could only you had to have permits and all sorts of things. But you could get a plane to Trichy. That was considered internal. And then we had a bus. And the bus broke down several times on the way, but it wasn't the discomfort I remember. Rather, the wide open spaces, the dung fires, shooting stars in a sky much larger than he had ever known it. Little villagers and stalls where they stopped for coffee, poured from tin mug to cool it down in a fluid steaming arc. Southern coffee. Sadly, in the north of India, you only get Nescafe. Very sad. But you know, these are the memories I have. And traveling in India has just been fantastic. You know, I try and do it twice a year at the very least. But let me just end by reading to you the moment when I think India crystallized for me. You know, India was for Sri Lankan this large, slightly dirty continent. Nothing like Sri Lanka. And you know, one saw individual bits of grandeur, but it didn't tie together until, again, many years ago there was a train journey. And so I took a bus to Hyderabad. Couldn't find a place to stay, so I had to sleep in the bus overnight. And then I went the next day to Bijapur. You know whether many people know Bijapur. The streets were filthy. Most of the mosques and tombs, apart from the Golgombas, were surrounded by squatters and squalor. Nothing had been restored. Yet despite all that, there lingered a moving sense of beauty, of a history to be cherished, of inspiration that would always find fulfillment. And later I wrote about India, and I don't know whether any of you would agree with it. And I think perhaps in today's India, this sort of statement is perhaps even more difficult to say and to be accepted. But what I wrote, this was after, I wrote it in 87. Race in India did not imply a tradition, allow for the sweep of continuity that could, not entirely superficially, be traced from Greeks to Romans through the empires, the French Revolution, etc. Even in Istanbul, there could be traced a relatively orderly succession. But in Bijapur, everything coexisted simultaneously. That for me is the great richness of India. So nothing belonged, because there was a sense, no sense of an inner core to which anything could be attached. So there's a great sense of life, pulsating life that encompasses everything. And to me that is India's great joy. And I hope you continue with that. Thank you.
You remind me of this quote that says, "Travel is only glamorous in retrospect," which I think is so true, because oftentimes when you're traveling, especially on a budget, you know, you're cramped on a train, a bus, a ferry, some kind of transportation. Sometimes you're in the back of a pickup truck, crossing borders, and you know, you're often you haven't showered, and things are so dirty. And then in hindsight, there's almost this like romantic haze around what you've gone through. I don't know if you guys feel that way at all.
I think fortunately we're optimists. so, you know, that's how we live on hope in every country, whether it's, you know, bureaucrats, whether, you know, the systems, we fight it, you know, but we have to live through it. So when a government changes, irrespective of which country, we say now comes the government, it's going to change, you know, India is going to change, France is going to change, America is going to change, and nothing changes because, you know, the world is much bigger than that. So our positivism makes us remember the good things.
Do you think travelers in particular are hopeless, positive, like people who just see the positive in things, are hopeless romantics in that sense?
Well, I think in India, you know, we haven't had a revolution. So I think the majority of the people live on hope, on positivism, on faith. And travel is a very good way, even for poor people. The whole idea of a pilgrimage was that actually, that you got out of the house and you forgot your own miseries. You also saw there were other people there who had lots of problems and that they dealt with them in a different way. A man who goes from the plains to the mountains, he says, oh my goodness, they live up there and their water source is there. So, you know, I think that enriches their life and lessens their traumas and tragedies.
I completely agree, and I think, and for me, I recognize that traveling in a way felt almost like falling in love. You know, it's the newness, the novelty. Every day there's someone new to meet and some new experience, and it's very exciting. And to be honest, it reminded me a lot of when you first fall in love with someone and you're discovering them for the first time.
So one of the things, we laid down some ground rules for our travels, right? In addition to the budget, the other rule was that we wouldn't spend more than 3 nights in a place because we had a lot of territory to cover. So we'd move at a hurtling pace, right? Why? Because Buddhist monks were cautioned against sleeping under the same tree more than 3 nights because the human mind gets attached. So the tree becomes my tree, you know, in 3 nights if you sleep. So we said, okay, we're going to keep moving. Invariably what would happen is the moment I reached a place, I would fall madly in love with it and I would say, oh my God, we have to live here. Can we live here? Okay? And the economist, as you know, was also the one sort of, you know, saying hurtling pace, remember? And there's no cake.
What I thought we should do simply to give more time for interaction is now throw it open for questions. And please ask anything you like from anyone you like or from everyone. Because I think that would give us a chance. And then at the end we'll have a couple more words each. Any questions or comments from anyone?
So this question is to all of you. Now if I am traveling, I am enjoying. But the moment I feel that I have to write about it, at least personally, that would affect my enjoyment. Do you go through that?
For me, this past trip at the end of last year to Africa, I knew that I was going to write a book set there. It definitely put a sort of pressure on to experience certain things and to sort of distill down those experiences into tangible words to convey. But for me, I tend to not write as much on the road. I'll jot down notes and ideas and themes and sometimes little lines for inspiration. But I feel like my thoughts always come best at the end of it because, you know, with hindsight, you're able to see kind of the large picture of things. I don't know if you feel the same or different.
I've got the same sort of thing, same sort of process. And also approach my research-based travel as a job. So I will be taking lots of notes, and I record things, and I take photos and videos and that sort of thing. And because I think when you're writing, when you're removed from the situation, it's really hard to actually remember what it felt like. And it's the more you have in that sort of, you know, kit bag of yours, the better you are. I know when I was researching this book in Afghanistan, I made all notes, but I actually came to India to do the writing and went to Bir in Himachal Pradesh and just locked myself up in a guest house at a monastery and wrote for 3.5 weeks. And it was the best, most productive writing time I've ever had, you know. Because I had all the collateral I needed to write the book, and now I just had to write the book.
I think that anxiety, because we had got ourselves into a bit of a situation since we had committed to a book, right? So while traveling, there was always that doubt that would there be a book, a good book at least,